Now let's learn about the instinctive behavior and the various examples of this instinctive behavior. Instincts. Among animals, there are many examples of elaborate behavior that show adherence to a plan that is relatively constant throughout a species and is not acquired through previous experience or learning. These types of behavioral patterns are considered to be instinctive, a term that brought by ethologists, and this term that through the years has had many meanings. The word instinct is one that we often use in everyday life. The child ran in front of my car and instinctively I slammed on the brakes. Mothers know by instinct what is best for their children. There is nothing so powerful as the mating instinct. These examples are all rather different, but they have one point in common. We talk about actions as instinctive when they are done without conscious planning. Scientists use this word in the same way as the opposite of intelligent or reasoned, but in the scientific usage, instinctive carries two extra meanings. One of them is helpful and the other is not. First, to a scientist, instinctive generally implies innate or inborn, the opposite of learned rather than the opposite of reasoned. By extension, instincts are often used to refer to broad behavioral tendencies which are widely believed to be innate. We talk about the mating instinct, the maternal instinct, the gregarious instinct, and so forth. In other constant, we might call them drives or motivations. This specialized scientific meaning of instinct is quite reasonable. That is not reasonable, however, is the tendency to see the description of behavior as in some way an explanation. This is obviously wrong. To say that some behavior takes place without conscious circulation or conscious calculation or even without individual learning is no way to explain it. It is simply to label it as being so far unexplained. The early ethologists considered innate behavior to be behavior that is determined by heredity and that is part of animals' original makeup and therefore that is independent of experience of the individual. Thus, Conrad Lawrence in 1939 writes about the characteristics of innate behavior as being hereditary, individually fixed, and thus open to evolutionary analysis. Tinbergen in 1942 refer similarly to instinctive act as being highly stereotyped, coordinated movements, the neuromotor apparatus which belong in its complete form to the heredity constitution of the animal. In 1951, Tinbergen postulated that various instinct centers in the body were arranged in a hierarchy. This helps the animal in saving the energy required for the stimulation of a particular behavior. For example, initiation of reproduction in animals led to a number of associated behaviors such as nest building, courtship, and parental care. This instinctive behavior is innate, comprised of motor patterns that can be carried out correctly the first time they are evoked. Instinctive behavior depends on the activation of programmed neuronal circuits. Appropriate fixed action responses are made the first time the animal sees the necessary release signs. The rigid distinction between innate and learned behavior is unsatisfactory because many aspects of behavior are influenced both by genetic factors and by experience of the individual. Now, let's learn about the examples of instincts. Food pecking behavior of gull chicks. The early work of Tinbergen and Burdick in 1950 has shown that shortly after emergence from the egg, the herring gull chicks begins to peck at the tip of its parent's beak. The pecks in turn induce the adult gull to regurgitate a mass of half-digested fish, claims or refuse from the local garbage dump. This serves as the first meal for the baby bird. Tinbergen considered the chick's pecking response to be an innate or instinctive behavior because it has characteristic of all baby herring gulls performed in apparently stereotyped manner right from the start of their lives outside the egg. Tinbergen used cupboard models of beaks and heads to determine exactly what caused the gull chicks to beg. He and his colleagues went to gull colonies, took newborn chicks to a test site, and presented them with various models. These tests showed that only some of the models' characteristics were significant in affecting the behavior of the young birds. Thus, relevant stimulus properties were the shape of the bill, which is long, pointed objects were preferred over short, stubby ones, and the color of the patch, red preferred over all other colors, and the contrast of the patch with its background. The more contrast was appreciated. In addition, a moving big model attracted many more pecks than a stationary one, and a beak that is pointed down has more effective than one pointed in any other direction. The next one is the nest building behavior in tailor birds. A young long tailed tailor bird has managed to acquire a mate and is in the process of building its first nest. The quick little bird first finds two large hanging leaves and then proceeds to sew them together in most curious fashion, first by punching holes in their margins with its sharp beak and then threading strands of spider web, cocoons of caterpillars, or bits of string through the holes. It manages to tie stop knots in each piece of thread and to pull it tight so that the leaves from a short of pouch. A bird then searches the area for area for twigs and grass which will make the floor of nest, and on this cushion it deposits its eggs. The tailor bird has not witnessed nest building by other birds, and it has had no previous experience in such a task. But on its first try, it built a nest that may not be perfect or ever as good as those of older birds, but it is adequate, and the tailor bird is able to raise its offsprings. Building of spiders orb web. The circular or orb web of a spider is the outcome of highly complex and stereotyped behavior patterns that has a key role in the survival of the organism. It constitutes a trap in which flying prey is caught. It extends the range of a nearly blind organism and provide the substrate on which hooked legs can move at high speed. The is built of silk threads which are secreted and spun by three pairs of spinnerets containing hundreds of microscopic tubes running to special abdominal silk glands. A stereoprotein secretin and secretion, a stereoprotein, a scleroprotein, I'm sorry, a scleroprotein secretion emitted as a liquid hardens on contact with air to form the silk thread. Various stages of construction of a orb web are very important. Formation of frame threads, radii and central hub. An orb web with most of its radial spokes but no catching spiral. The numbers indicate the order in which the radii are laid down. Note that each radius is built in a different sector from the previous one. A completed orb web with viscid sticky catching spiral and spider lays down a highly coiled viscid spiral starting at the outside of working inward, removing and eating the temporary scaffolding as it goes. Spider sits in the center of the web of the orb web. Spider's silk threads are stronger than steel threads of the same diameter and are said to be second in strength only to fused quartz fibers. The threads will stretch one-fifth of their lengths before breaking. The orb webs are spun by many spiders all over the world, and the whole operation takes less than half an hour. Most spiders in the field tend to build their webs early morning at sunrise. Orb web is a regular structure made up of frame, radial spokes, and catching wished spirals. The stages of construction of an orb web were first worked out by Hans Peters in 1939. The main rules of the orb web spider are first to build a Y-shaped scaffold, then in a set order, and frame and radial spokes, and finally the auxiliary, temporary, and non-sticky and sticky spirals. Each main rule contains a set of sub-rules for measuring angles and backing set distances up certain threads. By following the program of elementary rules, the spider can build a complex structure without having a plan of its in her head. All young newly hatched Next example. All young newly hatched cuckoos of the brood parasite European species will manure the eggs of their host parent onto their backs and out of the nest. In certain species of brood parasites such as honey guile, the newly hatched and blind nestling may even kill the host nestling or push them out of the nest. This is a instinctive behavior. So three examples were discussed. First one is the food pecking behavior of gull chicks, then the nest building behavior of tailor birds, along with the uh, net construction or the orb web construction of spiders.